Hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. Today's in-house assistant is Crew, so if you hear him purring, it's just gonna happen. And in today's video, I am going to be challenging myself just a little bit, not all the way, just a little bit to try and render something with colored lighting on. And so I have a strongly yellow toned lighting throughout the video up until the very end, and yellow and purple being complementary colors, purple being my favorite shading color in the entire universe. They sort of cancel each other out, so the yellow lighting makes the color purple look very gray, and I can't tell what is purple throughout this video. So, it gets really, really interesting, and I have to rely on cap names and just instinct to try and figure out what might be purple, what might not be purple. And this is a challenge for me to kind of trust myself to know what to do, but also to try and push myself towards colors other than purple. And so, it was a really, really fun experiment to kind of see what I could and couldn't figure out. And I look really forward, I really look forward to you guys seeing how surprisingly not bad this comes out at the end. So please, if you have the time, stick around till the very end to see the final rendered drawing. With my job starting back up and school getting kind of fully into the swing of things, I found myself having a lot less time throughout the day than I would like to be utilizing my phone to record videos. My job is all virtual, and a lot of my conversations have to be done over the phone. Additionally, I find that I just end up a little bit more focused in class than I anticipate being. I'm more accustomed to classes where I can kind of just not pay as much attention, and so being in 3D modeling, I really just can't miss anything, or else I'm not going to be able to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I've been finding that all of my drawing time and the time of the day where I really get creative has been late in the afternoon recently, and so I've been having less opportunities to record my drawing process because I'm finding myself up at like midnight, 1 a.m. doing the sketches that you see in these videos. And I don't have any good lighting in my house. And so I figured the absolute best solution to this issue, to both be able to record, get more creative again, in an aspect that's outside of my courses, so outside of 3D modeling and outside of me being a TA for photography, I kind of thought, okay, I have this fun light. I'm going to go through the process of slowly working my way up to challenging myself to do illustrations with the colored light on and kind of have to rely on cap names and color names if possible, and just kind of trying to trust the process and what I understand about color and color theory to try and figure out what colors I'm working with. I think it'll be fun. And because I've never done it before and I'm not super familiar, I have a very particular way I approach coloring things. Being very nervous, I decided to go very easy on myself at first and choose a light color that, one, is a little bit more normal, not super intense, but also a light color that will just cancel out one of the primary colors I use, which is purple. And so I chose something yellow toned. It does not look anywhere near as yellow on camera as it is in real life, but you'll see me start to hold up cap colors at a point to kind of show how brown and gray they are looking, and those are all colors that I know by name to be purple. Like, they'll be violet, they'll be mauve, and they'll look like a completely different color than they're supposed to be. And so that's kind of where the trusting of the colors comes in, which do not do with Ohuhu markers. I know that They're great. I love them. I've accumulated 3 sets over the years that I've been, creating and using them since I was probably like 17, 18 years old. So I've been using them for 3, 4-ish years, and they're great and I love them. However, they have some cap colors that just absolutely do not match. I made a reel about 2 of the most offensive ones just because I found it so funny at the time. I was so offended by how off they were. And it happens. So, I always say swatch your markers, but in this situation, swatching is only so helpful. I swatched the skin tones, well, what I was pretty sure were skin tones, to be able to figure out which one was lighter and darker and figure out where I was going to place those values. And I did that for a couple others where I was trying to pick between, honey, please don't scratch my blankie. Thank you. But I had it for a couple of others where I swatched just to try and figure out what they were. And I'll explain my absolute biggest crisis later, which was trying to figure out which of these pencils was black and which one was purple. Could not tell, still don't know which one was which. But I'll mention all of that when it comes up. But I figured a yellow light, it's a challenge, but it's not completely absurd, and it's also not going to be too hard on your guys' eyes throughout the process. And it creates this really cool, fancy ring, because the lamp is a circle, along the bottom. The red is super, pretty, and I really like it, and it makes my sleeve look really fun when I hold it up to the light, so it's also just something that, tickles the childlike happiness in the abyss of my brain. I really like the light. And so I hope you don't mind as viewers that I'll probably be doing stuff like this a little bit more often, just to kind of try and accommodate my work schedule for a little bit and try and get a better idea of color and kind of explore myself. This is me trying to hold up a purple, by the way. This is supposed to be violet or maybe lavender, but it kind of just lays down looking a purple gray, not quite the vibrant purple it's supposed to be. So the yellow tone is a lot softer than the intensity of the purple markers. So fortunately, there are times where if you catch it just right, and if it's a much darker, more saturated purple, the cap will catch a little bit better. Yellow, especially not a yellow that's a 1-to-1 with the purple you're working with, can only mute out so much of the color, right? So for the most part, I was able to work it out and start creating those sensations that I really liked. However, I also had to keep in mind that this yellow light makes the color red a lot more vibrant than it actually is. And so when I'm placing down flush to the cheeks and kind of trying to create the more luscious lips that I'm trying to go for, and I'm trying to do the red eyes for this little vampire character I'm doing, I need to remember when I'm sitting there that this isn't going to look the same when I turn the light off, and I need to go heavier on the saturation than I usually would need to. It's a very interesting little mind game, and I kind of recommend it. It's very fun, and I was really surprised with the final product, so I'm really happy with it, and I think you guys will really like it, and I didn't think it would look this good, so I really hope you guys like it. I'm really a huge fan. But in terms of the coloring, it goes pretty slow and steady for a while, so I want to talk about the little character design that I got up to and kind of the decision behind it. I sketched in ballpoint pen at the beginning of the sketchbook this adorable collarbone length, wavy haired vampire, and I gave her these massive eyeballs. And well, I usually draw eyes much smaller in my style, not quite this big, I think that I'm very fond of this as a kind of way of taking up the face. So I think I do want to start drawing eyes a little bit bigger. And when I do my more cat eye type shape or draw thinner eyeballs, I'll give them a lot more eyelid to continue accounting for that space, but I feel like it just makes eyes easier to make super expressive, if that makes sense. Like, there's something about them taking up this much of the face that just feels so fun and expressive. I feel like it has a lot more of a characteristic than some of my art does when I draw eyes a little bit smaller. And I feel like it just, I don't know, there's something about it that just really is appealing to me right now, and I want to work with it a bit more. I do really like my current style and stuff like that, but I want to incorporate more of this. So it's less of a style change. I know when it comes to style and like what you recognize in an artist, it can be easy to fall into the idea of things like when an artist draws this way, that's their style, and that eyes are a really huge part of my art style, and how I draw eyes are very indicative of my art. However, I think that there's room for multiple eye styles to help create a bigger diversity in characters and a more kind of definitive and fun appearance. I hope I'm making sense, but I'm not doing away with the way I draw eyes usually. Rather, I'm using this as an opportunity to create more diversity in the designs of the characters that I'm working with, and using it as a method for me to be able to kind of distinguish between characters in a way that's a bit more fun. Oh my gosh, Cruz is covering his face with his paws and he's just coddling it in his... It's so cute. I'm sorry, I got distracted. This is what assistants are for, being adorable. But yeah, sorry. But I think it's a really good and effective way of kind of just pushing myself out of my comfort zone, but exploring character design in a way that's going to be very beneficial to me. I've talked about it before, but I really want to get into character design, like professionally, not as my sole source of income, but I would love to be able to work on character design part-time, full-time, somewhere, someday, right? It sounds so fun and right to me. And I don't know, it's just something I'm really hopeful for, right? Of course, I want to be a teacher, right? That's what I want to do with my life and have be my career. But I would love to get to work in the art industry doing character design at some point. And so by slowly implementing different ways to diversify the appearance of the characters that I create, I think it's going to benefit me in the future when I graduate with my master's to have a portfolio that shows diversity and kind of help me to not fall in the trap of drawing the same way everything. It'll help with same face syndrome. It'll help prevent me from kind of making everything look a little bit too similar. And that's something that I've always been worried about. I haven't really come up and actually had that feeling become too intense recently, but it's always something I'm very nervous will happen. I haven't actually been drawing that long in the grand scheme of things. I'm not one of those people who... I was an artistic child. I loved art. I wanted to be an artist. I really enjoyed it. But I was raised in a science-first household, and so I very quickly did away with my passion for art in favor of what ended up being a botany degree. I wasn't actually supposed to get a botany degree. I was pushed towards something else by my family. And I made the decision for myself when I was 16 that I was going into botany instead. But I wasn't really given the space as a child to be an artist and like pursue my artistic passions. And so I wasn't one of those kids who was like always an artist, was always an art kid. I was actually really bad when I was younger because there wasn't the creative space to be an artist in the home, right? And that was partially because I was doing a lot of stuff to help raise my younger sibling and all of that nonsense, shenanigans, I was the only one to help him with his homework and all of those sorts of things, whatever. But so I didn't really actually oh, wow. I didn't get to start taking art seriously more until I was 16, and even then it wasn't that serious. It was very much a passion and a hobby for me, and it was in my second, third year of college. I was like, I can do this. This can be my career. I can be an artist. I don't have to just say no because I was raised in a household where being an artist wasn't an option, right? And so I've only been drawing consistently since I was 16, right? And so, 5 years this November, I'll have, I don't turn 21 in November, but I started taking art seriously in November. That's when you can scroll back to find the beginning of my art account, like in November 25th or something weird like that. It'll be my 5-year anniversary of taking art seriously, right? And so when you look at it and treat it from that perspective, I don't feel like I have been, doing art all that long in the grand scheme of things. And so I haven't expended my knowledge, my basis, my understanding of things. And because of that, I'm always worried that in 10 years or 5 years from now, I'll have kind of reached a limit of diversity in the way my art looks. I'm always nervous that people will stop finding my art particularly interesting because I'll start producing work that looks the same over and over again. That's kind of a anxiety for me that I'm nervous of hitting, right? And I know it's kind of foolish and not particularly serious, but I want to start thinking about ways now that I can make my characters more diverse from each other, so that when I think about drawing a vampire girl in 5 years, I don't fall back on a very similar looking design, I hope this is making sense, but it's something I'm doing more so to kind of make sure my passion stays exciting, I guess, if that makes sense, to make sure that I stay exciting and that my work stays exciting for me, right? Because I don't want to do the same exact thing forever either. I want to draw my OCs forever, but as I get older and I have more life experiences, they are as well, right? And so it'll be the same character but a different story. A same character but a different point in their journey, But when it comes to these one-off character designs, unless I implement her as a full-time character, but I haven't thought about outfits and things like that. There's so much risk that they will, because they're a stagnant kind of blip in my creative universe, a blip in the expanse of what's going to be decades of me drawing almost daily, which is wild to think about. I get nervous that things will start to look repetitive on the outside. It'll feel new to me, but it won't feel new to other people. I don't know if that makes sense, and maybe it's a very weird niche and kind of borderline philosophical kind of anxiety to have, but it's something that I still want to think about and take into consideration while I'm young and in my master's degree, where I can ask for and receive the guidance that will help me to kind of try and avoid this ever being an issue in the first place, right? I'm in an environment where I have a lot of people who can kind of help me figure out how to grow up as an artist, I have older artists in my life whilst I'm in college who can help me figure out how to stay passionate, if that makes sense, which I'm pretty sure it does. But that's kind of just something that became really important to explore, and why, of all the 5 sketches I've done this week, this was the one I wanted to render with the light and push myself to explore in an environment where I can't think too hard about the implications of things, right? I hope I'm not sounding too out of touch with myself at this point. That weird philosophical kind of conversation out of the way. My biggest regret with the drawing overall was the way that I kind of just didn't take risks with like the shirt rendering. The shirt was something that was very much an afterthought when I was sketching it because the face was all I really cared about, and so I just tacked on an oversized sleep shirt, and I did a really bad job of trying to indicate the shrugged upper shoulder towards the crease of the paper, so her right shoulder. I didn't do a good job of showing that I wanted her to be kind of like shrugging her shirt kind of more on, sort of. It was late and I wasn't thinking about composition, it was just a sketch, and so I do end up going back and making the shoulders look different once I'm done. Like I did it today, after all the recording and stuff, but overall, it was just a very bland white t-shirt. I kind of pictured it being like an oversized t-shirt dress kind of approach, and so what I should have done was just hope that I used a good shade of purple or gray to do the shirt, create something a little bit more fun like that, and then do some purple, maybe even some yellow lighting on the shirt, but instead I went for this kind of grayish brown. It looked like a bit more of a deeper beige in the lighting, and then added pink to just kind of create some fun pizzazz. But I feel like I should have just rendered it how I would have rendered it if I cared about it, which I would have kind of done I probably wouldn't have even left it white. I probably would have chosen such a light gray you could hardly tell, like a cool gray or a warm gray 0 or a warm gray 1 or 2, and then added fun shadows like purples and blues to that. And that's kind of my biggest regret. I didn't care about it, I just cared about the skin and the hair, and so I feel like I lost an opportunity or threw away an opportunity to kind of have more fun and also maybe make an even more messy illustration overall. And I'm still actually considering going back in now and just doing the entire shirt in black. I'm thinking about making it just a void so that it completely frames the face. I think that could be really fun. And something I'm thinking about, but I don't want to completely ruin the drawing before I completely post this video. I want to enjoy it a little bit longer before I just say, well, let's just create an abyssal void in my sketchbook and hope it works out. You know, I want to enjoy it. I want to have it sit there for a couple of weeks where I can see how I feel about it, and I also feel like sketchbooks are so non-committal that maybe I'll have a better idea in 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, and I'll go with that instead. But for now, I'm thinking about doing the entire shirt a deep black with just some very thin pre-decided white lines to indicate the creases, the buttons, and the pocket. But I wasn't thinking about it as thoroughly as I should have at the time, and so it just kind of looks funky, and it bothers me throughout the entire video. I never get to a point where I don't feel like it looks off or wrong, so I don't know. If you guys have better ideas on what to do with this shirt, I'm very open to it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to change it eventually. How I change it and what I change it to is what I'm very conflicted on at the moment, and very much open to suggestions and any sort of better idea on what it should end up looking like. I hope you're all excited to welcome back to the channel everyone's favorite really low quality sketching pencils that I use to kind of make more texture to my like marker drawings. I cut out a lot of this video, by the way, all of the weird jump cuts, is because I couldn't see. So I brought my whole head into frame basically to try and maybe get a better idea of what color I was holding. So I should have probably prefaced that earlier. All of the jump cuts are me cutting out where my hair takes up way too much of the space. But overall, I found myself not being able to distinguish the purples, the darker blues from the black, which is nerve-wracking because I know that I have 4 or 5 purple ones and a very deep blue, and that I can't tell which one the deep blue is. I never saw it as far as I'm concerned. And when swatching both of these, they both look completely black to me. I do not know which one's which, cannot tell. I ended up giving up and just saying, okay, I don't know which of these is actually the color I want, which of these is that dark blue Juno pencil, and which one, I think they're called Juno Golds, and which one's that dark blue I was hoping to use. So instead, I decided I'm going to use a different pencil later, and for now, just focus on creating some more texture and definition in the hair and the skin, trying to create more depth, make it look a lot more nice, well thought out. That's generally how I approach a lot of my marker drawings, is to kind of focus first and foremost on getting down the base colors and the base shadows that I want, and then adding a lot more depth using colored pencils and paint pens. I didn't pull in the paint pens because they're in an area where I can't really move them to my desk without spilling them all over the floor, and I didn't want to turn the light around a bunch of times. So no paint pens, just colored pencils. And so I spent a lot of time with what I could tell were reds, probably pinks, and I think there was a light purple in there somewhere maybe, and just creating some texture, creating some zhuzh to everything, more depth, more fun colors, making it just look spicy. That's what I wanted, right? And I think that they worked out really, really well, all things considered. I usually want a lot of control with my colored pencils because, one, I'm not proficient in them. 2, they're all about texture and layering over the marker in a way that creates this illusion of different colors. So basically, I've talked about this once before on my channel. No, maybe twice. But when you have dots right next to each other of different colors, your brain kind of makes up the extra information and blends them together, right? And so what I try to do with colored pencils is have a thin enough texture and layer of the color so that you can see the marker through super well, and then kind of make up the hue that exists between the pencil and the marker base, right? Like, that's my goal generally. And I layer a lot of different pencils around each other to help create this nice hue. But I can't see very well. All of the reds kind of look too similar to me to actually know what's going on. So I was just hoping the entire time that I was layering them down in a way that I would find appealing later. The confidence was gone at this point. I was like, everything looks so red. And the hair's pink, so where it started to look really red in the inner area near the neck, I was just thinking, this might actually be more vibrant and less in shadow than I wanted it to be. Like, I was getting kind of scared that maybe overall the outer areas of the hair that would theoretically be in light were actually going to end up looking a lot more shadowed and like neutral than the inside, where, you know, the light should be pretty pretty intense, right? So, like, just cast in that gray, what it would ideally be purple. So I was getting really nervous and very shy about my competence at this point. I was starting to think it was going to look way worse than I originally anticipated. I actually was feeling really good when I was rendering the skin with the markers earlier, and it had that kind of vibrant pink hue. I was like, wow, this is pretty lifelike for a vampire. She's got some really nice skin. Really, really nice, like, tone to it, right? And yeah, at this point I was out the window. I didn't have any idea how things were looking. I soon got out my original Ohuhu set that I've had for a long time to try and find a purple that might help create a sense of depth, because everything was feeling too similar. If you squint your eyes while looking at the screen right now, aside from the purple cap that's on screen, maybe, it all looks the same, right? You can hardly tell the face and the eyes apart from the hair. It's all too similar in value, which is a huge no-go for me. I want to have a lot of varying values in my art. I don't like when things just kind of have one general value. I don't even like single areas feeling that way in the first place, you know? Stylistically, it makes complete sense to me for other people who do it, but for me, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right with my art style. And so, getting out a kit that wasn't pastels or skin tones, because those are the other Ohuhu sets I own, was part of the process of creating that depth. I knew I couldn't get any further depth-wise with a pastel set. It wasn't going to have the colors that are deep enough to allow for it, and I couldn't figure out which of the colored pencils were colored and which ones were black. So that was also out the window for creating the depth, which was my original goal. I was hoping that I could just use the colored pencils to layer up a sense of depth and keep it kind of simple, not go in with the darker shadows that my other set would call for. I find that the base Ohuhu set, at least the way it was several years ago when I got this one, is a little bit too saturated in the purples for me. I like a desaturated purple, and they don't really have any. So I find that I very rarely use the Ohuhu set, the base one, for shadows specifically. Like, I very rarely find that that is what I'm hoping for. It has a color that speaks to me in terms of, like, the tone I'm trying to achieve. I do eventually start to kind of work on creating a little bit of an overlay for the shirt in a moment with the Juno Gold, like, nameless colored pencil. And I don't really feel super great about it, and that's why I quit partway through, just kind of returning to the shirt for a moment. But I ultimately kind of give up on the shirt throughout the last half, aside from where it connects to the chest and trying to create that sense of depth and the illusion that it's not pressed to it, that it's not pressed to her skin, but that it's not part of her, you know, just creating that line that shows that it's casting a shadow and that is something that's three-dimensional and popping off from her flesh, right? So that's about all I really care about in the shirt from here on out, and adding my signature circles here and there. Maybe I did add white highlights to the buttons at one point off camera because my phone ran out of storage, which is also something that happens. You will see a jump cut where there are no highlights and then there are highlights. I had to delete a bunch of stuff off my phone to finish this video, so when that happens, I'm sorry. You missed out on the juicy highlights and I feel really bad about it. Even with the markers, I ultimately ended up concluding that because I don't want to go too far into the blues, because I'm working with a pink and I don't like the way pink and blue look together that much, I decided that I think that's a purple, I hope it's a purple, and overall the best plan would be to just probably fix it up just a little bit more with the purples I picked out, what I was pretty sure were purples, and then call it good. Not pick out any more markers, right? I think I figured them out, and I shouldn't take the risk of trying to decipher any more possible purples, right? I don't trust myself, and I found dark enough colors that I felt like it was going to be good enough for creating the overall feeling I want, and that instead I should go to something that I know will be the color I want, right? So I got out a colored pencil set in a minute that actually does have color names so that I could pick out a color that would be dark enough to start doing the basic line work before going into the actual line work of the drawing. And so with the kind of ultimate decision to do that, I finally was able to return to the confidence that I was going for and like trying to have originally with it overall. And it's okay, I guess, but I have so few of that colored pencil brand in particular that I just felt like I still couldn't get the blending I wanted, which was still kind of sad, but ultimately it was the best decision overall, honestly. So, I mean, it's okay. With my much more superior colored pencil procured, one thing that I finally got to do and focus on, which is very important to my art style, was creating an idea of darkness around the eyes, which was one of the things that was really feeling off throughout the whole drawing. One, I do love a vibrant, bubbly character who's super fun, super snazzy, super playful, joyful. You know, I love a golden retriever character. However, I also want everybody to look like they're so painfully and horribly sleep deprived that they have absolutely never ever had a good night's sleep in their entire life. Like, that is it's a part of my style that I don't think is gonna change. I might change the way I draw noses and eyes. I never like a character that I draw to look like they've had a good night's rest before in their entire life. I love a purple under eye. And so I felt really good to finally get to kind of create some texture and depth around that area and start to outline the actual kind of hair and the areas that I really wanted to stand out. I'm a person who just really needs a solid, good form of line art, whether it be colored pencil or ink. It's almost always ink. I almost never can just do colored pencil and actually enjoy it. But it felt just so good to start creating a depth that distinguishes those chunk of hairs from the ear. That's one thing I was really struggling with throughout the process, was feeling like the ears were really getting lost in the hair in a way that I couldn't quite recover, because I wanted them to be flushed and pink. I wanted them to look oddly lifelike for a vampire and just have that cute hue to them, but having pink hair, it just ended up too bubblegum pink feeling with the lighting and all of that. And so finally being able to outline them and kind of create this feeling that they are a separate thing, that they're not just some goofy design in the hair. You know, like, they could have been goofy hair clips this entire time. If I told you that, you might have believed me, honestly. I'm not so sure though. But it felt so good to start distinguishing them and having those features all start to feel like separate parts of a unified whole, right? That's something that just, I don't know, it was making me feel really insecure. And I did get a much deeper red one, the one I used to sketch the thing, just to have that like red added to the eyes, because I did outline them in a brown at first, and so I wanted to kind of create this feeling and idea that the eyes were a little bit more red and get rid of kind of that brown tone that I was starting to create. It was feeling too natural for a vampire. So what I did to fix that was start to go in with a highlighter to, one, create a bit more of a sunkenness to the eye area and kind of the hair, and then go in with a black brush pen to just do the base eyeliner kind of feeling. Technically, none of my characters wear eyeliner. They have the thickest lashes the universe has ever seen. And so I just kind of start with that process. I deepen up the pupils, make it so that they're clearly there. They're not getting lost in the red iris anymore. They have their own standout color. And that alone really started to bring the drawing home for me. The hardest part about doing marker art, like 99% of the time, is not having a finished face until the very end, right? Those deep lines and those deep shadows that I use and create with line art under the chin, around the neck area where hair meets skin, doing those eyes, adding those little line dashes on the nose and the circles on the cheeks, giving them a wet thing that distinguishes them a little bit more from the skin. It's the hardest part because I want it to look in its finalized form so much, but I know that I'm not the type of person who can commit to a drawing being done until I've done just about everything else, right? That sounds stupid when I word it that way. I can't just do the entire face, line it, and then work on more of the drawing. I'm going to change my mind about something or add a color somewhere that I need to implement into the face to create that cohesion that I want. And so I literally just cannot be trusted to line before I'm completely done. I want to be finished with the project. I'm over it. I'm tired, unless the line art is done before everything else and I'm doing a more color book approach. And I probably should go back to doing that a little bit more, not entirely, just a little bit more, so that I can have a little bit more confidence with where I'm going with drawings in the future, for like finished illustrations. But in my sketchbook, I think I'm going to stick entirely to just using color to define areas until the very end, and trying to use those colors to distinguish things, because I think that makes me stronger as an artist. And I think having those definitive separations and hues that make it so you can at least kind of tell that they're two separate areas is important for me, render-wise, to having a well-rounded finished piece. I'm not someone who personally likes to do a more cell shading style, but I also don't do realism either, and so having that in between where you can kind of tell without the line art, but with the line art it's very strong, very obvious, and looks really, really nice is that perfect middle ground for me. And so I want to practice that a lot in my sketchbook in the coming months, so I hope you guys are into it. Either way, it's gonna happen, and I really think that this one started to look really good even before the line art got included. And frankly, I think that the line art just kind of brought home that final extra depth I needed overall. But as a sketch in a sketchbook, I could have left it without. Would it have looked not great? Yeah. Could I have maybe told somebody it was finished the way it was before if they've never seen my art before? Yeah. And that's something that I want to be able to do one day. I don't want it to be my style. I don't want it to be something I do exclusively. Just having marker and pencil to be able to define the line art all around. But I would like to get to a point where it would be believable that it's completely finished, and that's something that I'm hoping to achieve. And so with the black parts of the line art finished, I go in with a colored lining pen. It's a bit more of a felt tip kind of thing, just to create more depth with solid blocks of color. I know these pens look really good. I like to use them to fill in areas and create a line art feeling of depth. I don't even know how to describe it. Where I would usually put a massive block of black, I instead like to use maybe 2 or 3 different kind of tones of line art to create that feeling, to create that sensation, and the kind of overall illusion of there being depth. So it'll go like black, super deep purple, and then to a pink for the line art in the area, and then it'll blend into the marker. It'll make a lot more sense when the light is natural, because you can much more effectively tell what I'm trying to communicate, because you can see the difference between the pen and the marker a lot better, I promise. But for now, I think I just sound delusional. Which is fine. Frankly, maybe I'm delusional for thinking that this turned out surprisingly excellent for a first time with this type of experiment. And frankly, I'm going to be doing it a lot more regardless, because I've been drawing at night so much. So frankly, it's an experiment, and I think a growth exercise for me artistically to kind of create more confidence, because I feel a lot more confident after this. While I did have my doubts and my kind of, oh, maybe this is way harder and way uglier than I thought it was, I end up feeling really, really good about this. I feel really good about this, like right now, actively. It's positive feelings from me currently. So with this all being said, very, very soon you guys will be seeing the finished drawing in the daylight, and so I just want to say thank you so much for sitting all the way through this video with me, being here throughout the whole time, engaging. So if you drew along with me, feel free to share it. I love to see it. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. I would love to hear what you got up to and your creative pursuits along the way, if you did any. So please share them in the comments below if you're interested and comfortable. And so I hope you liked it, and I look forward to seeing you again in a different video if you wish to subscribe. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. And with that being said, bye-bye!